Welcome to our class for today. In today's class, we'll learn how to draft a pencil skirt, but this time around, we'll have some alterations compared to the previous lesson. So we'll learn how to draft a pencil skirt with waistband, waist dart, zipper, as well as back vent. We're also going to finish this skirt using inseam. So if you found value in any of my videos, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and leave me a lovely comment. So without wasting our time, let's get started. The first thing we usually do is to take our vertical measurement. So I'm going to take my waist to my hip is 9. Then I'll take my waist to above knee is 19. I'll measure that and square across. This is my hip line, knee line, and my skirt length. So from my waist to my hip, I have 9. Waist to my knee, I have 19. And waist to my skirt length, I have 26. Up next, what I will do is to mark my waist. So my waist is 33 divided by 4. That will give me 8.25. Then I'll add my darts. For this skirt, I want to make use of a dart of 1.25 at the front. So 8.25 plus 1.25, that will give me 9.5. You can still make use of 1 inch. In the previous skirt, I made use of 1 inch. You can still make use of 1 inch. So I will go to my hip. My hip is 44 divided by 4. That will give me 11. Please take note, all these measurements, I did not add sewing allowance. I don't add sewing allowance to my pattern. Then I will go to my above knee. I'm going to mark 10.25. So I'm just taking off 0.75 from my hip measurement. I will take the same measurement at my hemline, 10.25. Then I'll connect the points. I'll go to my center front. I would like to come down by 1.25. In the previous video, I came down by 1 inch. So, but here, I want to come down by 1.25. Then I will take my dart placements. My bust span is 7.5 divided by 2. That will give me 3.75. And I will mark that here. I will also go to my waistline and mark 3.75. Then from my hip line, I'll come up by 2 inches. Then I'll connect this point. Then that's 1.25. I'm going to share it between this point here. And that will give me 0.625 on both sides. So I'm going to mark it this way. And I'll also mark this way. Then I'll connect it to this point. Then I'm going to connect this line here to this. But before then, I will need to close this dart because I want to sew it. But let's go to the back first. For my paper, to get the width of the paper you should use, I did my hip divided by 2. And that gave me 22. Because my hip is 44 divided by 2, that will give me 22. Then I added, for my back vent, I added 2 inches. For my zipper allowance, I added 1 inch. So 22 plus 3 inches, that will give me 25. Then I added 1 inch just to use it between the two patterns, and that gave me 26. So you can either use 26, just increase your pattern. So for this, I'm going to rule a ½ inch line here. So I will start by taking in my back tightening 1 inch. Then I will measure my waist. My waist is 33 divided by 4, 8.25. Then for the back, I'm going to add 1.5. And that will give me 9.75. I'll mark that here. Then I'll go to my hip. 44 divided by 4, that will give me 11. I'll mark that here. I'll go to my knee. I use 10.25 at the front. So I will still repeat 10.25 here. Then I'll also do that at the hemline, 10.25. I'll connect the points. Then I'll do my dart placement here. I'll measure that 3.75 here, which is this. Then for here, I'll measure 4.75. Also, I'll get a straight line. Then I'll come up from my hip line by 2 inches. Then I'll share the 1.5 I added the back waist. So that will be 0.75 on both sides. Then I'll go to my knee. I'm going to measure 1 inch here. I'll repeat that measurement at my hem line, 1 inch. From my hip, I'll come down by 4.5 inches. Then I'll go in by 0.75. We'll use another method in my next video. So I'll connect it this way. Then I'll connect this to my knee. Then I'll connect it to my hemline. Now, after doing this, I'm going to measure my zipper allowance now. Please don't be confused. What I'll do is this. I'm going to wipe this line just so you understand what I want to do. Because it looks like I have too many lines here, which can confuse someone who has not done this before. Okay. So the next thing I'll do now is to take my 1-inch zipper allowance. I'm going to include it now. So after I finish adding my zipper allowance all the way from the waist to the hemline, I'm going to add 2 inches for my vent. So from this my zipper allowance here, I'll add 2 inches. I'm adding these 2 inches from my knee. So I'll add the 2 inches. Then I'll connect this way. So what I've done, let me explain. Just the way we did the previous drafting. Just that in the previous one, I did not include this zipper allowance. But in this case, I needed to include it so that you will see how many inches I added after the zipper allowance. So when you are done drafting the normal skirt pattern, you include your zipper allowance. And after including your zipper allowance, then you extend from the knee line, extend 2 inches for your vent. So I will go to my center front and I will connect the 1.25 I came down by to my waistline. But before I do that, I will need to separate the pattern. So I'm going to close this dart here temporarily. We will still learn how to draft a dartless pencil skirt, high waist. So just join me in this series. Everything about skirt finishing will be fitted in this series. Different ways of finishing your skirt, whether it's pencil, whether it's panel. Just stay tuned with me and we'll be able to do all that. So I'll connect this 1.25 all the way to my side seam. Then I'll cut my pattern out. For the side back, I'll come up by 1/4 inch. Then I will connect it into the dart. In my previous video, I explained why you should do this. The next thing I'll do is to cut out my waistband. So I'm going to close this. I'll close the darts. There should be no darts on your waistband. Then I will measure out 1.5 inches. Please, you need to follow the curve on your waistline. So you ladder this up, down, center front, side front. Then I'll cut it out of the pattern. On my skirt pattern, the dart will be open, but on my waistband it will be closed. So it will be permanently closed on my waistband. So I level this up, down, side back, and this is center back. I will leave this 1 inch as my allowance. Then I'll also close the dart here permanently. After I label this, I will now cut out my pattern on my fabric. So here is my waistband. This is for the front and this is for the back. So what I will do is I'm going to merge them. I will join them together with the help of my masking tape. So what we want to do here, we are doing inseam. We will also learn other methods of preparing the waistband, but for this particular technique, This is how to work on it. So I'll make sure that there's no space in between, and I'll place this waistband on fold. So this center front will also be on fold because on my skirt the center front is on fold, and then the center back will actually have the sewing allowance. It will be open. I'll place this on my fabric and cut. I place the fabric slightly on bias, and then I added half an inch sewing allowance on both the up and the down part of the waistband. Then I cut it in two places. Please don't place your waistband straight. Place it, just follow the curve. You will see it's not straight. Then I went ahead to notch the side seams. That place I matched the front and the back seam. So mark it and notch it on your waistband, as this will help you when you are sewing this onto your skirt. Don't forget to mark your wrong side and the right side of your waistband, so you don't sew the wrong side as the right side. I also use my waistband pattern to cut out my interface. So place your interface the same way you folded your fabric and use it to cut out your interface, but don't add any sewing allowance. The next thing I will do is to notch the side seams up. Then I'll use my iron to stick the interface onto the waistband. Then I'll run a stitch on the top part of the waistband, leaving the space for zipper allowance. So right here, I finished cutting out my pattern and my fashion fabric. I made my fashion fabric 2 inches longer than my pattern. I used 1 inch all around the side seam for my sewing allowance. And I used ½ inch on the waistline. I used my fashion fabric to cut out my lining, and I made my lining 2.5 inches shorter than my fashion fabric. But every other side they are the same. Then for the back, I made my fashion fabric 2 inches longer. The sides I added 1 inch. On the waistline I added ½ an inch. Then my lining is also 2.5 inches shorter than my fashion fabric. So the next thing we'll do is to work on the back lining. So right here I have my lining facing me, the right hand side and my left hand side of the lining. So I will come from the vent. I'll set this aside. I'm not working on this. The adjustment will take place on the left hand side of the line. From my vent, I'll come down by 1 inch. So my ruler has the 1 inch mark on it. I'll just rule it. So the next thing I'll do is I'm going to mark in 5 inches from the edge of the vent inward. I will go in by 5 inches. I'll come to the hem also. I'll mark that 5 inches. Then I will connect it. Now, this is the part I'm going to cut off. But before I do that, I'm going to measure the ½ inch that I will use to attach this lining to my fashion fabric while turning it. So I'm going to mark the ½ inch up here. This is the line I'll be sewing on. Then I'll also mark ½ inch vertically. After doing that, I'll go ahead and cut. So I will cut in this direction. So let me explain again. From my vent, I came down by 1 inch. From the edge of my vent, I moved in by 5 inches. Then I marked ½ an inch all around that I will use to attach the lining to the fashion fabric. So I'm going to cut on this line. On the first line, please. So I will discard this part of the lining. We don't need it anymore. So what I'm going to do next is to apply stay on this part of my lining. All around it, I'm going to apply stay on it. I'll do the same thing on the fashion fabric too. I'll apply stay on the vents on this part. I have applied stay on the vent of the fashion fabric and I marked ½ inch all around it. I have also added stay around the vent of the lining, and I will go ahead and mark ½ inch all around the vent
including the hemline too. That is what I'll use to join the lining to the fashion fabric. Then for my zipper allowance, I used 1 inch, so I will also mark 1 inch along the zipper allowance. Then at the hemline, I'll use ½ inch. I will sew on the lining from the hip point. I will sew it down until I get to that ½ inch at the vent. So that's where I will stop. Then I will do the same in my fashion fabric from the hip point. Then I will stop ½ inch from the edge of the vent. That's what we'll use to attach it to the lining. I'll join the waistband now, but I won't start from the edge. I'll leave that 1 inch sewing allowance for zipper. Then I will start to sew. Then I'll move away from the stay like 1/8 of an inch. This is the vent of the fashion fabric. I will sew it until I get to the edge of the vent. Then I will stop at ½ inch from the vent. I will also sew the back of the lining. Then I'll stop at ½ inch before the edge. So I'll go ahead and notch from this angle down here. So I've notched it. I notched it up till 1/4 inch. Then the next thing is to give this a good press. Right here, I finished pressing the vent at the back. So I pressed all the way from here to open up the vent. This is for the fashion fabric. Then for the lining, I also did the same thing. I pressed open it this way. So I'm going to place the fashion fabric with the wrong side facing me this way. Remember, when we sewed from our hip line down here, we left ½ inch opening at the edge. So I'm going to use this ½ inch now to attach it to the lining. So I will take the lining. I will place the lining, the right side facing me this way. So I'm going to flip it this way. Then I will take this part of the lining and open up this part of the fashion fabric, this part, not this part. So you move this one aside, then you take it this way, and so I'm going to sew down until I get to this ½ inch here. That's where I will stop. So if you measure this from here, you see that this is 2.5 inch. So you can just decide to say, okay, measure from the down. You know the lining is 2.5 inch shorter than the fashion fabric, so you can just measure 2.5 inches. Then you start sewing. Finished attaching this part. I've sewn it down, and I stopped at that ½ inch. The sewing allowance, I stopped at ½ inch. I will flip this part this way, and I will take this part and attach it to this part. But before I do that, I will have to notch this part a bit, else it will cause some level of tension when I finish sewing. Just notched it like 1/4 inch away from this point. Then I will take it this way and I will match it onto this. So like I said, you can just measure 2.5 inches from the hemline, or you can use this part of the lining to match up this. So I'm just going to mark this here, and then I'll take this way. If you want, you can pin it up. You take this to this other end, and then you also match this up. Now after doing this, I'll take it to the sewing machine and I will sew from this. I will sew from the ½ inch here all the way down to this ½ inch. I will stop at this point. I finished sewing this part. I finished attaching it down here. I started from the sewing allowance, that's ½ inch. Then I sewed it all the way down and I stopped at the ½ inch at the hem of the lining. Then I gave it a good press. So you can see there's no tension, there's no squeeze or rumple around here. So that's how to achieve this kind of neat finishing. Next thing I'll do is to lift up my lining from the waist. I'll take it up, then I will just notch here. After notching here, I will lift up my lining. This is my lining and this is my fashion fabric. So I will match them up this way and I will sew on this crease line. So that's the importance of ironing this place down. It helps you to create that crease line that you use in sewing the vent up. So I'm going to go to my machine right now. I'll lift up the lining, the fashion fabric. I will sew them up together. So right here, I've finished giving this vent a good press. So you can see everywhere is laying flat. Then that half inch we left, we're going to take up this half inch on the fashion fabric and then match it. We're going to match it this way. Take it and match up. Then you sew. You sew it till the end here. I've finished sewing it from the center back all the way to the side seam. Then you notice that you have an opening here. This opening, just fold it this way with the sewing allowance facing this way. Let the sewing allowance be towards the lining. This one, face it here. Then you sew from here all the way down here. I've completed the sewing from here down here with the sewing allowance facing the lining. So the next thing I'll do, I'll just trim off a little bit from here, so to avoid having bulky seam. Then I will bring out this tip this way. So after this, I will give this a very good press because I will use this to align this other part of the vent. After sewing this part and ironing it, the next thing I will do is to take up this part because you need to iron this part so that you will be able to get your alignment for the other part of the skirt. So I will lift it up this way, then I will open it up. I will use this part, just press it this way, and then you press this other side. Wherever they meet, let them match there. That should be your tip. So with this, I've gotten the tip here. What I'll do is I'm going to cut off the excess, leaving 1/4 inch that I will use to sew this together. After cutting that excess off, I will turn it this way. I will now go to my sewing machine and join this together. I will sew this edge. After I finished sewing it, and I sewed from the tip up until this other seam. So take it close. Then after doing this, I will turn it to the right side. I'm going to give this a good press. So you can see that the lining of the back skirt aligns on both sides. So this shows that we are on the right track. We are doing it the right way. So after I iron this, the next thing I will do is to finish this up. I'm going to take this part. I'm going to turn it this way and I will sew half inch. This half inch that I marked, I'm going to take it down all the way to the seam. I'm done with the back vent after sewing this. So I'm done. I finished pressing every seam down. So look at our back vent, it's properly done. The metered edge is properly sewn. Just follow this step. You will definitely have the same results. So let's look at the right side. Everything aligns. Make sure that this part too, that they are equal. So the next part now is to join the back to the front. But before we do that, this is what we'll do to the front. So I've sewn in my darts. I didn't bother to show this part because I've shown it in my previous video. This is the right side of the fashion fabric. It should face me. Then I will take the right side of the lining to face the right side of the fashion fabric. So that means that the wrong side of the lining is facing me. Then I will take it to the hemline. I will sew them. I will join them at the hemline all the way using half an inch. Please join it using half an inch. So this is my half an inch. I'm going to sew it this way. After sewing it, I will come back and show us the next thing to do. I've sewn the hem of the lining with the fashion fabric. So after doing that, I'm going to take it, I'll take the lining onto the fashion fabric this way. Then I've given it a good press. You press it. That means that after you join, you drag the lining up to match up with the waistline because we gave some allowance for the hemming. So that's why the fashion fabric is showing here. The lining is shorter than the fashion fabric. After pressing the hemline down, I will turn the skirt this way with the right side facing me. I'll take the back part of the skirt and I'll place right side facing each other. I'll place it this way. Then I'll match up the hem like this. So I will make sure that they align at the side. They align at the side. So this is it. I'll use my pin to hold it. I'll take it down. So you can see that they match up. They are equal at the hemline. Don't forget, always iron your allowance towards the lining. Then I'll also use my pin to hold it here. I'll continue that way until I get to the waistline also. They also match up at the waistline. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine now. I will sew it on the 1-inch sewing allowance that I gave while cutting the fashion fabric. Then when I get to the hemline, I'll maintain that 1 inch. Then there's something I said in the previous video, whenever you're doing inseam. So after the hemline, the 1 inch, I will just start moving inside. So I will use 1/4 inch to join the lining. I will do that up until the waistline, then I'll use 1 inch again. I'll repeat the same thing on this side. This joining the sides. This is how the inside looks. So I've joined the sides of the lining and that of the fashion fabric where we did for the other one. But the difference is that we left the opening by the side. So this is the opening. I will conceal it later with hemming gum. Let me explain how I prepared my waistband. I applied stay on one part, that stay that we cut on one part of the waistband. That's the facing part. Then I bent the other part with hemming gum and I left the other part open, that of the waistband itself. Then that part of the waistband that is not folded, that's the part that I will use to attach the waistband onto the skirt. So I will align the center front of my waistband to the center front of the skirt. I just want to pin it and ensure that I don't have any excess. Then I'm going to leave the 1 inch allowance for the zipper. That is where I will attach the zipper. So in this technique, you have to sew your waistband first before you start fixing your zipper, because the zipper will run all through to the waistband. I will repeat the same thing on the other side of the zipper too. I finished fixing the zip. So see what I did. That open place I left on the facing of the waistband, I sewed the zipper up onto this place. I've taught how to fix zipper. Just the same way, make sure that the point aligns, the stopper here aligns with this edge. Then I will now use this and turn it over. I will sew this way to close up this side. I'll finish turning my zipper allowance so you can see the lining. It's neat, it's neatly turned. After which I joined the lining with the fashion fabric and the waistband. I did that all around the skirt up until the other side. I repeated the same thing. I used the lining to turn the zipper allowance so you can see everything is neatly turned. The inside is neatly turned. Then the waistband, I used it to turn the remaining parts of the zipper. So after doing this, the next thing you do is to turn it this way. You bring out the facing of the waistband. The inside is still open. So what I will do is I will take this skirt to the sewing machine. I will close up that open part, but I'm not going to sew it from the back. I won't sew it from the back. I will sew it from the front using a technique called stitch in the ditch. So what I mean is I'm going to sew between the skirt and the waistband. So I'm going to sew here. That's where I will run my stitch. But as I'm stitching it, it's going to catch the facing at the back. I'm going to sew between, but it's going to catch this place. So this place will be completely sealed up by the time I'm done sewing this skirt. After turning your zipper out, the next thing you do is to confirm that your both waistband are equal. Make sure that they are equal, so to give you a professional look at the end of the day. If you found value in this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share and leave me a lovely comment. Until we meet again, bye bye for now.